Loneliness is one of the most common and painful feelings we experience after a breakup. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the three effective ways to deal with it. So that if you are feeling lonely after a breakup, hopefully this video changes the way you look at it and inspires you to deal with it differently. Okay, so the first effective way to deal with loneliness after a breakup is letting go of emotions of shame around feeling lonely. It's okay to have these feelings in general, and it's especially normal after a breakup. We are social beings. We crave love and connection. We need it to survive, so it's one of the reasons we fear being alone. When we acknowledge that these emotions are part of the human experience, we stop making ourselves wrong for having them. Feelings of loneliness are heavy enough to go through, so let's not add shame to the mix. Let's not make things more complicated and difficult for ourselves. Remember that even the most secure and grounded individuals who are comfortable being on their own experience feelings of loneliness. They too seek love and want to bond with a partner. This means that feeling lonely doesn't mean that we are flawed or broken. It just means that we want to experience the very fiber of this life, which is love, relating to another soul, to another being. I think it would be abnormal not to have these feelings, especially after a breakup. So, when we remove shame from this mix, we accept the very nature of our being. We accept that this is a need that's ingrained in our DNA. Therefore, it becomes okay to experience it. Feelings seek our attention, and the best way to give is to feel them. The more we feel, the less painful it becomes and the less demand it seeks. I think one of the reasons we're afraid of being alone is that we are afraid of what we might find when we are on our own. We are afraid of facing the pain, afraid of facing our insecurities and finding out how we truly feel about ourselves. Sometimes we even translate being alone into being inadequate or flawed. But we need to realize that having those feelings is part of the process, especially if the relationship was deep and meaningful. Remember that even though the relationship itself is over, feelings of longing, grief, guilt, and loneliness can linger. It may take some time, so please be patient with yourself. Know that all those emotions are temporary. So with time and self-compassion, they will pass. You will find new ways to fill your life with meaning and connection again. Now let's move to number two. The second effective way of dealing with loneliness after a breakup is to examine our sense of identity, our core beliefs about who we are. It's common that when we are in a love relationship, we tend to identify with ourselves through this unity, through this entity. So many of us lose our sense of individuality and we forget how it feels like to exist on our own. Therefore, a breakup is a great opportunity to examine where we derive our sense of identity from. So, for example, do you define yourself based on your success and external achievements, or according to your values and personal standards, or maybe based on the emotional state that you experience on a daily basis, or maybe it's about the quality of the relationships, the value that you add to other people's lives, or maybe it's none of that. Just take some time to get clear on what makes you you. Think about what are your core or identity beliefs about yourself. What do you believe to be true about who you are? Ask yourself, how do these beliefs direct your decisions and affect your relationships? It's important to remember that our existence and joy in this life isn't tied to another person. So, the relationship that matters the most, the relationship that shapes our lives the most, is a relationship we have with ourselves. So, maybe you want to reflect on this. How do you feel about yourself when you are by yourself? Really? Are you proud of you? Do you have your own back? Do you feel that you are your own best friend? Do you treat yourself with the same kindness and compassion that you treat people that you love the most in your life with? When I asked myself these questions years ago, I realized that I was my worst enemy. I was so mean to myself. I used to say very harsh things to myself. My inner conversation was aggressive and mean. I wasn't proud of who I was being. I felt that the person who disappointed me the most was me. So I couldn't blame anyone else, not even my ex, for how I was feeling. I had to take full responsibility of how I showed up to myself, no matter what happens in my life. I think it's really important to get to a place where we are comfortable being on our own, where we don't need someone else to make us feel good about ourselves. I believe that life is a lonely journey because no matter how much you love being around people, the only person you're going to be with 24/7 is you. I think it's really important to learn to enjoy our own company because it means that we have become okay enough being with ourselves, finding at least some level of joy, of fulfillment enough to be by ourselves. But it also means that when we want to be around others, we want to do it to connect with them, not to seek validation. Also, enjoying our own company means that we are no longer willing to put up with unhealthy relationships. This means that we're not going to be with the wrong people only because we are afraid of being alone. Now let's move to the third effective way of dealing with loneliness after a breakup, and that is using that time of being on our own for reflection, self-discovery, and growth. This starts with becoming aware of the language that we use. So, for example, and instead of calling it loneliness, we can just call it solitude. This immediately lifts so much of the weight that we have on our shoulders. It doesn't make it as painful to deal with as calling it loneliness. Actually, loneliness in the dictionary means feeling of sadness because one has no people around, no family, no friends. So loneliness focuses on the absence of people's company. Therefore, loneliness is a negative state to be in. Solitude, on the other hand, means having quality time with oneself to do things like observing, reflecting, and learning. It also means enjoying one's own company. So it's a positive state that brings value to one's life. Being alone gives us a chance to rediscover ourselves, to get to know who we truly are. This is the best chance to work on bettering ourselves by doing things like becoming aware of unhealthy patterns, for example. This was key for me because it helped me discover the reason behind unhealthy attachments. It helped me to do the work to heal past wounds, which mostly comes from our relationships with our parents or other parental figures during our childhood. We can also work on our securities to cultivate character traits and skills that help us to become better and live our best lives. I think the best thing that we can do with this solitude time is to know how to better use it. Take it as an opportunity to reconnect with yourself, reflect on your needs, or rediscover things that bring you joy and fulfillment, such as activities, hobbies, passions, and interests. This is an opportunity to reconnect with who you are outside the scope of a relationship with another human being. When we are with another person, we are often influenced by this person's preferences and choices. As a result, our sense of identity sometimes gets shrinked because we don't allow the fullness of our truth to come out because we worry that if we do, we won't be liked. So facing the fear of being alone by allowing ourselves to do things, to do new things, gives us an opportunity to practice our freedom and strength. It also makes us realize that it's not as scary as we thought it would be. Our brains often exaggerate fear because it's trying to keep us safe from doing something new. Our brains and bodies associate new with scary and dangerous. For example, the first time you take yourself out to dinner on your own might feel scary and weird. But when you do it a number of times, you realize that it's not as bad as you thought it would be. Not only that, but you might end up liking it, finding new and fun ways to reconnect with yourself. Remember that liking our own company doesn't mean that we no longer want to be with people. It only means that we become selective of the people we surround ourselves with because we know that we have value to bring to the table. We rather be on our own than be with our own crowd because we know that the quality of the relationships we have has a big impact on the quality of our lives. It also has a big impact on our peace, our mental health as well. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like this one about how to actually let go of an ex after a breakup. I'm Mona, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.